welcome to the OShow. I'm Laura Babcock, and I kind of thought that when we got a new council in a historic election, that we would see some of the old guard behaviors at City Hall come to a stop. But there seems to be a whole lot of secrets still going on inside those hallowed halls. And it's getting frustrating. I'm starting to wonder, is it coming from the city manager? Is it coming from the mayor's office? How is it that things are coming in front of our council that, as we're going to find out from our guest tonight, might even be illegal, if not just stupid to do? Mary Lou Tanner, urban planner extraordinaire. Joey Coleman, intrepid local journalist. So much so, Joey, that I think that there's a media policy designed to maybe inhibit some of your reporting. But the actual meat of the media policy seems anachronistic to me, if not potentially illegal in some of the way that it's put forward. But even if it's legal, it seems as though there's one person that it's trying to slow down their reporting access, and that would be you. Am I overstating it, or where are you with this weird media policy that the staff tried to push on council?
It's the city manager's top priority, and she's made that clear to council that banning me is her top priority and her main focus. And
when and how did she tell council that banning is her top priority?
So it's called professionalizing journalism and making sure journalism has standards, as she puts it. And that it has, we're back to the boss to complain to, basically.
Right.
So she and her chief of staff, her director of communications, who is de facto her chief of staff, Matthew Grant, were individually meeting with councillors to lobby them on this policy over a period of weeks. I've had councillors who said they wanted to discuss other matters with the city manager's office, and this is the focus. And the city manager is still working on it. You heard Matthew Grant say that the policy will ban the New York Times, that he will not allow the New York Times into City of Hamilton media conferences because they do not meet his criteria, which is twofold. One, you have to be part of a regulation body that the city imposes that tells you have to join, and only the two cities' options are allowed, not the other ones. And that you have to accept city funding in the form of rent-free offices they've spent $138,000 to build new offices for the media. These offices, it's 3/4 the size of an NBA court. And it's not designed for City Hall journalists, it's designed for media offices. So the media can have as many reporters as they wish to have in there and covering things that are not related to City Hall. And you have to be in that space. And as you know, I do not accept any government funding. Right. That would violate my ethics to accept. Yeah. And I understand that we're trying to find the future of journalism. So while I don't participate in it, and I don't think it's the best public policy, I don't accuse the media of anything unethical in taking funding from the government in terms of tax credits. And in this case, I have concerns about the rent-free offices in that, is that the best use of public funding in a city where we have limited money and higher priorities? So that's where it's at in terms of its legality. Behind the scenes, the city has been contacted by national press freedom organizations all across the political spectrum, by the Canadian Association of Journalists. The issue is that this free space has been promised to the media partners. So now they're trying to figure out a policy that enables this space to be used while not blocking my ability to do journalism, not forcing me to be there. So we're going to end up with, the motion was for a consultant. I don't know where that stands right now. There's plenty of chatter in Canadian journalism circles. The city's been reaching out to people, and we'll see where this goes.
So I know you tweeted that you're glad that Mayor Horwath said, let's study this further. And my response on a previous OShow was I'll do it for free right here. It's ridiculous, right? Imagine that there's some terrible disaster in Hamilton and the New York Times sends a correspondent, they can't access it. Give me a break, right? I don't know who this guy thinks he is. It's good to have media policies to a point, but when they become overreaching, or when they are looking as though they are trying to contain, in your case, a particular journalist because you're finding out too much, you're doing too much work. I remember when the Transparency Committee at Council was always going after you, Joey. And for people who don't know, you were grabbed by a member of Council, and eventually Council censured that individual. But you also are referencing this policy that they tried to cook up when Bob Bertina was mayor, saying saying that only journalists who had a boss they could complain to, aka not Joey, independent journalists, could, were legitimate journalists. And a bunch of us wrote at that time, no, that's nuts. So Joey, I have one more question to you, then I'll go to Mary Lou. You said here on the OShow a few minutes ago that the number one priority for the city manager with everything else that's going on is stopping Joey Coleman through this particular media policy. That's quite the statement to make. What, if anything, is the reason for that? Is it simply that you turned down the office, the sort of quid pro quo, or is it that you are on the trail of something they don't want to have come out?
It's an overextension of media control. It's a feeling that they have that, much like where I've reported on the remuneration, because I don't require access, and this has always been the tradition. We had a period of time in our society where we lost our alternative press. Those were those scrappy weekly newspapers that really went after government, that existed outside of the traditional circles. And we need that range of journalism. Let's be very clear that I do not replace The Spectator. I do not replace CBC. I do not replace CHCH. I do a different form of journalism. And when we package that all together as a society, we're better. I wish that there were a lot more to it. This is just a media control policy that's gone too far. It's completely out of whack.
But personalized to you, though. But you said it's about you.
It is about me. And it's because they can't figure out how to stop me. And, the best way of stopping me from being a problem is stop doing things that are a problem.
Mary Lou, do you think that Joey is overstating it?
Oh, I don't think Joey's overreacting at all. I think what he is reporting in terms of the city manager, and this is her number one priority, if she's in the meeting with councillors, it is her number one priority. But my question is, why is it your number one priority? So I start looking at the agendas, and there's an agreement with Metrolinx about LRT and some underground infrastructure on the agenda for this week. There's a report that I didn't even have time to read about the Waterfront Trust, another boondoggle of the city of Hamilton and the old guard. And that's important stuff as well. But the two biggest issues that this city is facing, housing, LRT. There has been crickets on LRT since the election. Absolute crickets. There was a presentation on housing that was done a week or 10 days ago that got great reception.
Good.
Where is the leadership on this file? Where is the leadership on LRT? Where's the communication on LRT?
With all these other priorities that Mary Lou talked about, yes, we're going to hear a roadmap to housing coming out soon from the city. Better be good. But we haven't heard about LRT. But when I hear the effort and attention going into something that kind of mostly restricts you and maybe the New York Times, it's just bizarre to me. Like, what is it? A personal vendetta?
Well, I do note what the city manager's office is doing. I note when they're removing public data. I'm noting when our next topic, and I'll segue to it, is I note when the city manager is asking for closed sessions that are not in compliance with the Act. I do file closed meeting complaints. I have numerous closed meeting complaints filed this term already because the city manager, in my opinion, has been misusing the 2J exemption, claiming that things have monetary value to the municipality that have no monetary value. And, this is a city manager who, she said it herself, that whenever she believes that council can go into closed session, she will recommend they go into closed session. And I'm, of course, the opposite, which is I believe council needs to justify, even when they legally can go into closed session, they need to justify to us why they're going into closed session, not just, hey, we can go into closed session because we can. And so we've got coming up this Friday, the new council has forced a strategic policymaking session for themselves. And this was a back and forth that was done in open session in February, where they're like, no, we want to start setting our priorities. And the city manager's response back was, well, I'm going to start meeting with you all in the coming future. And They set this workshop, and the city manager is claiming that it constitutes training, that the strategy workshop is training, that the council will not be discussing any of their strategy plans. They won't be discussing their priorities, and that they'll in no way be advancing the business of the city, which is absurd. You don't have a strategy session, but to strategize. And to strategize is to advance the business of the municipality. You cannot do it in closed session. This is not the first time. I remember when they had the ethics and transparency training, the city manager recommended that they do transparency training in closed session. Irony is dead.
You cannot write this. You cannot write this stuff. So I'm trying to use, I don't know why I'm not swearing. Maybe it's because Joey's on the panel. I don't know. I feel like I should raise my game, but you cannot write this stuff. So there's a pattern here, right? There's a pattern of saying, let's spend valuable city manager time on a media policy that on its face is unnecessary and seems to be particularly vindictive. It's a joke, and I hope national media organizations stand up and make it stop. You have a city manager who tried to have a transparency session done behind closed doors, is putting forward a strategy session, which Joey had to challenge Mary Lou, the veracity of it and the fact that it was illegal to do. My question is, does the city manager not know that these things are wrong to put forward or that they're sketchy at best? Does the mayor not know? Where is the safeguard to say, no, violation of the act, hello, over here, like, you're responsible to us. What is with Janet Smith, the city manager, Mary Lou?
Well, there's a lot to unpack. So, the first thing is we still got the culture of the old guard, which is if you can go into closed session, go into closed session. Let's have these discussions behind closed doors. And this new council, on the transparency training, and there was another issue, and I can't remember what it was, where it was recommended they go into closed session, and council said, no, we are staying in open session to have this conversation. And to the point where Councillor Crutch, said afterwards, if they had gone into closed session, I was leaving. I'm not going to participate.
Good for him. Good for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is this, the city manager is there to be the bridge between the staff and council. There is a strategic focus that the city manager has to have. And we are 4.5 months past, 4 months past the swearing in of the new council, and we are just getting to the strategic conversations. That's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. With the issues facing this city, with people living unhoused, the encampment policy from the former council, the cultural issues within the city, which have permeated so much, there is a desperate need for a reset in the culture of City Hall and the working relationship with council and what the priorities are. As city manager, and I would say as department heads, general managers, executive directors, whatever the role is of the most senior staff, you have political capital with council. And you have to pick where you're going to spend it. You're a fool if you don't, because there are some issues where you're going to have to talk to councillors and say, look, this is what we need to do. And if the city manager is spending her political capital on a media policy, she's not spending it on the things that this election was really about. It was about change. It was about transparency. It was about focusing on the priorities of the citizens. It was about treating people who live unhoused humanely and supporting them in their rights and their human rights, and moving away from the old guard behavior of secrecy, of that's not the way we do things around here. Remember those conversations from 2018, 2019, and 2020 towards 3 new councillors? The council has changed. and they are gelling around their expectations, not spending the time on strategic priorities and the focus of the organization. The focus of the organization is not the media policy. The focus of the organization of the City of Hamilton needs to be about the priorities: housing, LRT, transit, climate change. We have a new climate change office headed by Linda Lukasik. This is a priority. The UN report came out today. We are in real serious trouble, real serious trouble. And if we are not spending our time and energy from our most senior leaders on these issues, we are doing the biggest disservice to the electorate who said enough is enough last October.
So, I mean, again, in Hamilton, it's weird that we have to do this stuff. And I'm not taking away from the new councillors and their efforts, but when you're fighting against a very old, in some ways corrupt organization, it can be very difficult.
Government in a democracy does not get to define what the public knows, and they do not get to define who is a journalist. We, the citizens, do that in a democracy.
Well said. Mary Lou?
I just want to end with one issue, and it is 1083 Main Street East. The tenants who have been without running water since, I think, before Christmas. And the city said, we're going to wait for the landlord tenant board issue. 2 of the tenants had their eviction notices squashed, and still we don't have resolution. And we don't have a plan to get that building so that there is running water. And I tip my hat to those tenants. It is their stand for fair housing policy and their stand to protect their homes. And it is a bloody shame that our city leadership has not stepped in and said, we're done, we're fixing the building. And we're putting running water in there. They could put bypass water in there. They could. They do it all the time when pipes freeze, when, water mains freeze, or when something is under construction. But no, it got all caught up in legalese and the legal process and property standards. And I think it is just a symptom, and a glaring one at that, of the lack of leadership on housing in this city. And I truly hope and wish council the best in their strategy sessions, and that they set the ship right about what the priorities are. They need to do it. They need to give the direction.
It's a national embarrassment that in the middle of a downtown, in one of Canada's biggest cities, a building can go without water. And when they're spending their time on stupid crap like going after Joey Coleman, no offense, Joey, but there are people who need water. The city manager should not make you her number one freaking priority. It should be doing the job of effectively running this city. And it just drives me nuts that these people are without water, and that, as Councillor Pasuta said, he couldn't believe that this council couldn't figure out a way, that the city couldn't figure out a way, like you just said, Mary Lou, to get water to these folks.
You're absolutely correct. Even if I was the most annoying, gladfly, terrible person saying false things about the city manager, the amount of time that the city manager should spend on that is a few moments in the morning media brief where she says, we're not dealing with him, we're ignoring him, let's get to work on the real priorities.
Sure. That's one way to handle it. This is a ridiculous way to handle it. Thank you both for being on the OShow, and for everyone who watches and subscribes to the program. We'll keep bringing you great content, and take care of yourselves. Bye, guys.